He washed up face down. The unexplained damage is on the back of his head. Gravity doesn't work that way, and as of tonight, nobody official has explained the difference. This is true crime evidence. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss stories like this one. You already know the basic shape of this finding, an area of unexplained discoloration deep in the tissue at the back of Nolan's skull. Tonight, a panel of forensic and legal experts picked that finding apart in a way that hasn't been covered yet, and one of them raised a contradiction simple enough for anyone to check for themselves. When a body decomposes, blood settles toward whatever surface it's resting on, pulled down by gravity. Nolan was recovered face down. If gravity did this, the discoloration should be on the front of his body, not the back. One prominent forensic pathologist has floated ordinary post-mortem pooling as an explanation. A cable news host publicly disputed that theory tonight, on exactly this basis, and pressed a veteran death investigator for a real answer. He didn't have one. He had a different concern entirely, and it's worth walking through. Start with the diagram. In the independent autopsy report, the discoloration isn't described as a shapeless smear. According to a forensic pathologist reviewing the report on air, the doctor's own hand-drawn rendering shows defined edges, a top, a bottom, two sides, something closer to a rectangle than a random blotch. Ordinary decomposition spreads unevenly in every direction. A shape with margins that consistent is the kind of detail a pathologist flags specifically because it doesn't look accidental, even while stopping short of naming a cause. That distinction matters. Nobody on this panel claimed to know what caused it. What multiple experts agreed on is that its shape is organized enough to deserve its own explanation, not a shrug. Now the neck. This has come up before in this case, but here's the piece that hasn't been said plainly enough. The state's medical examiner's office is holding onto several structures from Nolan's throat, including the hyoid bone, and did not send them along when the body went to Washington for the second, independent exam. A veteran forensic pathologist walked through exactly why that specific bone matters. It's small, it sits high in the neck, and it's essentially only damaged by direct pressure, the kind produced by strangulation, whether by hand or by ligature. Examiners check it alongside the strap muscles that lie across the front of the neck, specifically to rule that possibility in or out. Without it, the second pathologist can't do either. One expert put it simply, medical examiners don't hold on to a hand or a foot for further review because there's nothing to prove there. They held the throat. That choice, on its own, tells you what they thought might be worth proving. There's a competing theory worth taking seriously rather than dismissing outright, because it's the kind of ordinary explanation that deserves real airtime. A searcher involved in recovering Nolan's body raised the possibility that the discoloration could simply be from marine life, something in the water making contact with the body before it was found. It's a fair point to raise, but the same forensic pathologist pushed back on it directly. Damage from marine scavengers tends to spread across whatever skin is exposed and accessible, not confine itself to one clean, bordered rectangle in a single spot. If something had been feeding on the body, you'd expect to see it elsewhere too. And according to this report, you don't. Here's a detail that's new tonight and deserves scrutiny in both directions. According to a leader of the volunteer search organization that helped recover Nolan, his team offered to bring trained cadaver dogs to examine the boat involved in this case. Dogs capable of detecting trace evidence of human decomposition even after an attempt to clean it. He says that offer was made to the family's legal team and was turned down, with a comment suggesting the boat had already been cleaned. His response was that no over-the-counter method would fully defeat what these dogs are trained to detect. I want to be fair here in both directions. We only have one side's account of how that conversation went and why it ended where it did. There could be reasons to decline an offer like this that have nothing to do with hiding anything, questions about chain of custody, about whether evidence gathered by a volunteer organization would hold up the same way in court, about legal strategy none of us are privy to. But it's a real, specific, on-record claim, and it deserves a direct response from the family's side rather than being left to sit unanswered. Let's talk about the size of the group Nolan was actually with that day, because new detail here complicates one of the loudest arguments circulating online. According to an acquaintance who was part of that same outing, this wasn't a handful of friends on one boat. It was somewhere around 20 to 30 people, spread across 3 separate boats that left the dock together and arrived together. A defense attorney reviewing this case made a point worth sitting with honestly. It's a lot easier to lose track of one person inside a loosely organized group that size than inside a tight circle of 4 or 5. And these were teenagers, not trained searchers, on a holiday, some of them drinking. He raised something else too, that traumatized teenagers don't always react the way adults expect. Freezing, going quiet, failing to immediately ask the right question isn't necessarily evidence of guilt. It's also, very often, just what panic looks like in someone that age. That doesn't resolve anything. It's simply a more complicated picture than 20 people and nobody noticed, and it deserves to be treated as such. Now, the sequence everyone keeps getting slightly wrong. It wasn't Christine calling around first. According to reporting, Warren Hudson, one of Nolan's friends, called Christine directly around 11:07 that night to tell her Nolan hadn't come back. Only after that call did she reach out to another friend's family to ask if anyone had seen him, and only after that did she and others start checking Nolan's location through Life 360 and Snapchat, which is where the mismatched location data first turned up. That order matters, because it means the search for answers started with a friend making a call, not with a mother suddenly out of contact and left to guess. On the phone itself, a legal analyst laid out something genuinely useful about how digital forensics actually works, and it's worth understanding before the next round of speculation about what's missing. If a phone has a passcode, certain actions, like deleting activity, require that code, and interacting with a locked phone at all leaves its own trace, whether someone's trying to view something or power it down. A proper forensic extraction can tell investigators whether content was soft deleted, meaning it still exists somewhere on the device the way a file sits in a trash folder, or hard deleted and gone. It can also show a timestamp for exactly when that happened. Time matters here specifically because devices don't hold onto deleted material forever. On an iPhone, deleted data can often still be recovered for around a month. On Android devices, some of that same data can be gone within days. Whatever happened to Nolan's phone, a full forensic extraction, not just a family member scrolling through it, is the only thing that can actually answer the question everyone's already decided they know the answer to. The FBI's involvement got a straightforward explanation tonight too. A former federal prosecutor on the panel laid out the 2 realistic reasons a case like this draws federal attention. 1. The family is represented by a high-profile civil rights attorney, and any suggestion that local authorities failed to act properly, especially if there's a racial dimension to that failure, can bring in federal civil rights jurisdiction on its own. 2. Smaller jurisdictions sometimes simply lack the resources for an investigation of this scale and call in federal help as a practical matter, not a sign of anything sinister. Both are plausible. Neither one, on its own, tells you which applies here, or whether it's some combination of both. One more angle raised tonight, from a psychoanalyst who spent time reviewing forensic interview behavior, is worth including because almost nobody else covering this case has brought it up. In cases like this, investigators don't just look at what people say happened. They look at how people talk about the person who died. Genuine concern, panic, guilt over losing track of a friend reads differently than detachment, minimizing, or quietly building a shared story that shifts blame away from the group. That's not a diagnosis of anyone specific in this case. Nobody on this panel claimed to know what's actually in anyone's private messages. It's a description of the kind of behavioral evidence investigators are trained to look for once the digital records are actually reviewed, and it's one more reason a full forensic extraction of every device involved matters as much as the autopsy itself. Underneath all of this, there's a family absorbing a level of public hostility that's easy to lose track of in a conversation this technical. Christine has said publicly that she's been second-guessed over her parenting, over the family's fundraising, and has been called racist simply for demanding a real investigation into her son's death. She's a healthcare provider by profession, and she said plainly that all she and Elmore have ever wanted is one answer. What happened to their son? That's not a legal argument. It's the actual center of gravity this entire case keeps spinning around, no matter how technical the panel discussion gets. So here's where tonight actually leaves this. A discoloration with defined, non-random margins, in a location that a straightforward gravity-based explanation doesn't easily account for given how the body was found. A pathologist who still can't rule out neck injury, because the structures that would answer that question directly were never sent to him. A marine life explanation that doesn't match the pattern actually described. A cadaver dog offer that was reportedly declined, with no public explanation yet from the side that declined it. A group of 20 to 30 people, not a handful, complicating the loudest question online. And a forensic phone extraction that, as of tonight, still hasn't happened, sitting at the center of nearly everything still unresolved. None of that adds up to a verdict. It adds up to a longer list of specific, answerable questions than this case had even a few days ago, and every one of them has an actual person who could answer it if they chose to. This case is not closed. We're going to stay on it as the forensic phone extraction moves forward, as the next structures either get released for review or don't, and as this heads toward a grand jury. If this is the kind of reporting you want, sourced, verified, nothing added for shock value, subscribe. We'll bring you the facts as we actually get them, and not a moment before.